Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Imagine a man born on a small, obscure island who rose to crown himself Emperor of the French and Master of Europe, a figure so monumental that 2 centuries after his death, his name still echoes through history, synonymous with ambition, genius, and controversy. Today, we're diving into the epic life of Napoleon Bonaparte. How did this one man reshape a continent and build an empire that would define an era? Let's find out. Our story begins in 1769 on the island of Corsica, just a year after it became French territory. Napoleon di Buonaparte, as he was christened, was born into a family of minor Italian nobility. His father, a lawyer, secured him a scholarship to a military academy in mainland France. It was a tough start. The young Napoleon was an outsider, teased for his Corsican accent and his relatively humble background compared to the French aristocrats. But this isolation forged a fierce determination within him. He was a voracious reader, devouring books on history, strategy, and mathematics. He excelled in his studies, particularly in artillery, a field where precise calculations meant the difference between victory and defeat. Little did his classmates or teachers know they were in the presence of a future military legend. Then came the French Revolution. In 1789, the old world was torn apart, and for an ambitious young officer like Napoleon, chaos was a ladder. The revolution swept away the old system of aristocratic privilege, opening up paths to promotion based on merit, not birth. Napoleon, a fervent supporter of the revolutionary cause, seized his chance. His big break came in 1793 at the Siege of Toulon. The city had rebelled and was occupied by British forces. At just 24 years old, Artillery Captain Bonaparte devised a brilliant plan to capture the high ground overlooking the harbour, making the British fleet's position untenable. His plan worked flawlessly, forcing the British to retreat. He was wounded in the assault, but was hailed as a hero and promoted to brigadier general. Overnight, Napoleon Bonaparte was a name to watch. His star continued to rise. After a brief period of political uncertainty, he was called upon to defend the revolutionary government from a royalist mob in Paris in 1795. Famously, he ordered his men to fire cannons into the crowder whiff of grapeshot, as he later called it. It was brutal, but effective. The government was saved, and a grateful Directory rewarded him with command of the Army of Italy. This is where the legend truly begins. The army he inherited was demoralized, poorly fed, and badly equipped. But Napoleon's energy was infectious. He promised them honor, glory, and riches in a whirlwind campaign against the Austrians and their allies. He demonstrated his military genius, speed, surprise, and the ability to inspire his men to achieve the impossible. He won a series of dazzling victories, conquered most of northern Italy, and forced Austria to the negotiating table. He returned to Paris not just as a general, but as the nation's most celebrated hero. But Napoleon's ambition wasn't confined to Europe. Eyeing Britain's power, he convinced the Directory to approve a daring expedition to Egypt in 1798. His goal was to disrupt British trade routes to India and establish a French presence in the Middle East. While his initial military campaign was successful, including the Battle of the Pyramids, his fleet was destroyed by the British under Admiral Nelson at the Battle of the Nile. Cut off from France, the Egyptian campaign ultimately ended in failure. However, it wasn't a total loss. Napoleon had brought with him an army of scholars and scientists. Their work led to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which would unlock the secrets of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and sparked a European fascination with Egyptology. Even in defeat, Napoleon managed to craft a narrative of scientific and cultural triumph. While he was in Egypt, the political situation back in France had deteriorated. The government was corrupt and weak, and the country was on the brink of collapse. Seeing his moment, Napoleon abandoned his army and made a dramatic return to Paris in 1799. He was welcomed as a savior, along with a group of political allies. He orchestrated a coup d'état on the 18th of Brumaire. He overthrew the Directory and established a new government called the Consulate. Initially, he was one of 3 consuls, but it wasn't long before he outmaneuvered the others and was declared first consul, making him the most powerful man in France. The French Revolution was over. The age of Napoleon had begun. As first consul, Napoleon proved to be as brilliant a statesman as he was a general. He set about rebuilding France from the ruins of the Revolution. He centralized the government, reformed the banking system, and improved infrastructure with new roads and canals. His most enduring achievement from this period is the Napoleonic Code. This comprehensive legal system streamlined France's confusing web of laws and enshrined principles of the Revolution, like legal equality, property rights, and religious toleration. It was so influential that it became the basis for legal systems in dozens of countries around the world, many of which still use it today. He brought stability and order, and for many French citizens, he was the strong leader they desperately needed. In 1804, Napoleon took the ultimate step. In a lavish ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral, with the Pope in attendance, he crowned himself Emperor of the French in a famous gesture of supreme authority. He took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head, then crowned his wife, Josephine, as Empress. He was no longer just a general or a consul. He was the heir to Charlemagne, the ruler of a new French empire. With this new title came renewed conflict. One by one, the old monarchies of Europe, Austria, Prussia, and Russia formed coalitions against him, fearing the spread of his revolutionary ideas. But on the battlefield, Napoleon was seemingly invincible. The year 1805 brought one of his greatest victories, the Battle of Austerlitz. On the first anniversary of his coronation, Napoleon's Grande Armée faced a larger, combined force of Russian and Austrian troops. Through brilliant deception and tactical mastery, he lured the Allies into a trap, shattering their armies and solidifying his dominance over Central Europe. This was Napoleon at the zenith of his power. Over the next few years, he redrew the map of the continent, placing his relatives and loyal marshals on the thrones of conquered nations. From Spain to Poland, the Napoleonic Empire stretched across Europe. He seemed unstoppable, a true master of war and destiny. But every empire has its breaking point. Napoleon's came from two critical mistakes. The first was the Peninsular War. In 1808, he tried to force his brother onto the Spanish throne, sparking a brutal, years-long guerrilla war that the French called the Spanish Ulcer. It drained his resources and tied down hundreds of thousands of his best troops. The second, and far more catastrophic, was the invasion of Russia in 1812. Angered by the Tsar's withdrawal from his continental blockade of Britain, Napoleon assembled the largest European army ever seen, over 600,000 men, and marched on Moscow. The Russians refused to give a decisive battle, instead retreating deeper and deeper into their vast territory, burning crops and cities as they went. Napoleon captured a deserted and burning Moscow, but with no supplies and winter approaching, he was forced into a horrifying retreat. Cold, starvation, and relentless Russian attacks decimated the Grande Army. Fewer than 100,000 men staggered back out of Russia. It was a disaster of epic proportions, and the myth of Napoleon's invincibility was shattered forever. Sensing his weakness, the nations of Europe formed a new, massive coalition against him. In 1813, they defeated him at the Battle of Leipzig, the Battle of Nations. The following year, Allied armies entered Paris. Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to the small Mediterranean island of Elba. The Bourbon monarchy was restored in France. It seemed his incredible story was over. But Napoleon had one last act. In March 1815, he escaped from Elba, landed in France, and began a march to Paris. The soldiers sent to arrest him instead flocked to his banner, crying "Vive l'Empereur!" He reclaimed the throne without firing a single shot. This comeback, known as the 100 Days, sent shockwaves through Europe. His enemies quickly reassembled their armies to confront him one last time. The final showdown took place on June 18, 1815, near a small Belgian village called Waterloo. Napoleon faced a combined British and Allied army led by the Duke of Wellington, with a Prussian army marching to join them. It was a brutal, hard-fought battle. For much of the day, the outcome hung in the balance. But the timely arrival of the Prussians turned the tide. The French army broke and fled. The Battle of Waterloo was a decisive defeat. Napoleon's second reign was over. This time, his captors took no chances. He was exiled to the remote, windswept island of St. Helena in the middle of the South Atlantic, thousands of miles from Europe. There, under constant British guard, he spent the last 6 years of his life dictating his memoirs, crafting the legend that would outlive him. He died in 1821 at the age of 51. So what is the legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte? Was he a tyrant who plunged Europe into a decade of war, causing millions of deaths? Or was he a modernizer who spread the ideals of the French Revolution, destroyed feudalism, and laid the foundations for modern Europe? The truth is, he was both. He was a man of immense talent and even greater ambition, a military genius, a brilliant administrator, and an enlightened despot. His wars redrew the map of Europe, while his laws reshaped its societies. He is a figure who defies easy categorization, and that's precisely why he remained so fascinating. His life is a powerful testament to what a single individual, driven by relentless ambition, can achieve for better and for worse. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the life of one of history's most compelling figures. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what you think of Napoleon, hero or villain. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.